Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So good to see you here this morning, this beautiful spring day. So good to see so many familiar faces. I will give it just a few more seconds to allow everyone to get logged in. So good to see all of you here today. Good morning. Good morning. So many familiar faces. I won't start naming names, then I'll have to go down the road because I see so many people. This is good to see here, but good morning. My name is Egypt Lloyd, along with my father, Dennis Lloyd, and the other members of the Lloyd family. We created the Slave Legacy History Coalition in 2020. And today is our spring presentation by a good friend, Scarlett Hoey, who I am excited for everyone to hear her presentation. Before I have the opportunity to introduce Scarlett, I will turn it over to our lead coordinator, Naomi Gordon, who will give the announcements today. Naomi?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So one moment, I'm going to share my screen with you all. So I'd like to start our announcements by congratulating Dr. Etta Fields Black, who had just recently been awarded the Gilder Lehrman Lincoln Prize for her book, Combahee Harriet Tubman, The Combahee River Raid, and the Black Freedom During the Civil War. She will actually be our presenter on May 14th. So I look forward to hearing from her. And again, later this month, we'll be holding our third listening circle at local AME churches. This time will be hosted by St. Paul's AME Church and Central Square. So many thanks to everyone there for hosting us. And that'll be open to all. And then this Thursday, so actually tomorrow, the North End Black Heritage Trail will be presenting at the next meeting for the Boston Commemoration Commission from 2 to 3:30, and that will be virtual. And then on April 27th, Dr. Barbara Brown will be hosting her walking tour on Brookline's Hidden History of Slavery and Freedom. So it is a 90-minute tour, and registration will be available online. And the MFA has an exhibit on the art of John Wilson. So this month there will be several talks focused on his self-portraits and his art style. So visit their website for specific dates. And then April 18th, Old North Illuminated will be celebrating the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. And they're very kind to offer us 10 reserved seats. And you can email Nikki Stewart to claim your free tickets. Her email is nstewart@oldnorth.com. And with that, I'll pass it back to Egypt to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Naomi. Great job. Great job. I would like to just remind everyone that we like to be respectful for everyone's time, so we will keep the meeting right at an hour. I do, recommend that you utilize the chat if you have the questions after Scarlett's presentation to enter into the chat so she can pull those questions and get those answers for you. I do also recommend you utilizing the hands up, raise your hand if you'd like to be called upon. So without further ado, we have our good friend Scarlett Hoey, who is the executive director of the Wayland Museum and Historical Society in Wayland, Massachusetts. She's discovered her passion for museums while earning a BFA in art history and photography at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. And at NEMA, in addition to her membership in conference marketing coordination, she organizes the community of practices on interpreting enslavement and freedom, along with organizing workshops on the topic. I do recommend that if you have not read Scarlett's bio in its entirety, to do that in our newsletter. So without further ado, let's please welcome our good friend, Scarlett Hoy.
Thank you, Egypt, and thank you everybody so much for being here. It's nice to see some familiar faces. Scarlett, Hoey, she, her pronouns. Gonna give me a quick second to share my slides. Give me 1 minute. Here we go, slideshow mode. And, oh, hold on. Of course, this is the hiccup. I also have a tendency to talk quickly, so if you find I'm talking very fast, just flag it in the chat and I will try my best to slow down. So let's see. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, we're good.
Cool. Great. Oh, it automatically shifted. That was interesting. Okay. Worcester art and telling the whole history. So like Egypt mentioned, my background is in photography and art history. I moved to Worcester County, Worcester, a couple of years ago. I was born in Australia. I grew up in Metro West and landed a position that brought me to Worcester. Worcester County is the homelands of the Nipmuc Nation and Agawam peoples and their affiliated tribes. There is in Grafton, which is just kind of next door to Worcester, the Hassanamisco Indian Museum and Reservation, and you can learn more about Nipmuc Nation on their website and also on Facebook. And if you're not familiar with the Native Land Digital Map, they produce a really great resource on native lands. But so for those not familiar with where Worcester is, it's kind of in the center of Massachusetts, and it kind of runs Worcester County north to south in this kind of center line. So this is a more colonial map interpretation, and you know, Worcester is next, it kind of neighbors with areas like Rutland, Leicester, Westboro, Grafton, for those kind of familiar with those town names. As you all are here, and this might not be one of your first Zooms with enslaved legacy history, I just want to kind of center some language that you'll hear me use, and I also want to say that I'm still learning in this process. So if I say a word that might be incorrect, you know, please offer me some space and grace. But otherwise, I'll be doing my best to make sure that I use the words enslaved person, self-emancipated individuals, enslaver, and where I know individuals' names, I'll be doing my best to name those individuals who were enslaved. So this is me. This is my camera. I shoot with a 4.5. If you know Ansel Adams, you know, he had the big 8x10 camera that you put over your head and your hood, and it's a negative that is a large format 4.5 negative, which you then get developed and you can scan and then process from there. So the body of work that I produced on the topic of history of enslavement in Worcester was produced using my 4.5 camera, and it's pretty hefty, but pretty portable. You can put it on a tripod and move it around. And if you have an iPhone, it's very lightweight in comparison, but it's also a really great tool. So bringing my skills and backgrounds of photography and history of art, I realized that, you know, there are so many institutions like the Royal House, you know, Cambridge, History Cambridge, and many other organizations that had been looking at the topic of enslavement and this history as it relates to the broader context of Massachusetts. And through my work at the New England Museum Association, I was very familiar with these museums, given that I was the membership person at NEMA. And I realized that, you know, Worcester County hadn't always been as accountable, or some of our museums maybe weren't as responsive to what other institutions were talking about and discussing and highlighting the people who were enslaved. And one note is that the Royal House and Slave Quarters, Isaac Royal Jr.'s home, he actually is the namesake of a town in Worcester County, which is North Worcester County, called Royalston. I know we've heard from Rika before on these panels, but You know, I think looking at the work that Marika and her team had been doing around the topic of enslaved individuals in Cambridge, it just made me kind of wonder, you know, where was this collective action and resources in Worcester? And then additionally up in Maine, I had been familiar with the folks up at Bowdoin who had put together an exhibit on Maine's economic connections to enslavement and partnering with Bowdoin and Maine Maritime to look at the industrial history. And Worcester is such a proud industrial town. I just, it really got me wondering, well, why aren't we talking about it? And being a visual learner, where can I use my skills and background to kind of think collectively about this history? And you know, surely looking at all the amazing organizations and folks that have been doing this work, you know, I wasn't alone kind of tackling, thinking creatively about the conversation for Worcester County. So these are just, you know, a handful of institutions that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The Slavery Adverts 250, this organization down here, one of the individuals is actually based out of a college in Worcester, which was great to connect with, and a professor at Holy Cross who's passed away, unfortunately, Professor Thomas Stoughton, was really instrumental as well in conversations on the topic of enslavement in Worcester County. So I was familiar with the 1754 enslaved census, noting that, you know, Worcester County and many towns didn't always report full counts of individuals, and it didn't give a depth to the humanity of those individuals. But using the kind of primary resources, I was able to create a document that, you know, hopefully starts to piece together that, you know, although many of these individuals in the 17th and 18th century Worcester County held, you know, positions of influence and power, there was also so many individuals that made all that work possible through enslavement and bondage. Worcester celebrated the tercentennial in 2022, and that was a big impetus for me to say, well, how can we acknowledge this history, and where is there space to kind of grow into acknowledging these objects in our landscape and buildings that were standing or not standing, and the heroes that we have in monuments on the Worcester Common that nobody talks about. They're kind of nuanced and complex histories as enslavers. I was really familiar with a gallery in town called Arts Worcester, the Worcester Arts Council, and I applied for grant funding to work on a photo and research history project, which culminated in an exhibit, and which I titled "In Plain Sight." So using many, you know, firsthand primary resources, you know, going to the local museums and local libraries, yay, museums and libraries. I was able to, you know, look at the archives and look at the research and be able to visually express and tell stories of the landscape of the history of Worcester through art and Worcester County broadly, because I look at both, you know, Leicester and Princeton and you know, the whole region. But the work is, you know, ongoing, and I was able to partner with a local area artist. Her name is Jennifer Davis Carey. Highly recommend check out her website. But she had done a really powerful series on Alfred, Delia, Drina, Facina, Jack, Jem, and Renty, using enamel to give them their humanity back. These are the daguerreotypes at the Peabody, and she, through this body of work, which I had in an exhibition in tandem with some of the artworks that I was producing, it just really spoke to kind of the depth of this history, and also how it's still present and with us and important to talk about for Worcester, but also for, you know, the state. Our show was at the JMAC, which is like a local gallery in downtown Worcester, if you're familiar with it. But we then went on to have a joint exhibit as well at the Danforth, which was really lovely. And kind of coming back to one of the pieces that inspired me was, or a woman that inspires me that has connections to Worcester County, was Obour Tanner. So I'm sure, many of you are probably familiar with Phillis Wheatly Peters. It was only a few years ago that I learned that Phillis Wheatly Peters' connection to Worcester and Worcester County is through writing these, really important letters to her, best friend and dear friend, Obour Tanner. And Obour was enslaved by the Tanner family in both Newport and Worcester, but the fact that they were able to maintain their friendship and discuss, daily life and books and through, I think it's over 20, or is it 20 letters that are at the Mass Historical Society archives. So I started trying to formulate, like, where was Obour Tanner when she was in Worcester? I know that we can find Tanner's gravestone in the cemetery. That's this gravestone on the right. We have the transcriptions of the letters at Mass Historical Society, but where was she kind of centering when she was in Worcester or enslaved in Worcester? And it was an area called Grafton Gore, which is kind of south between Worcester County, or Worcester and Grafton. So I started thinking about, how can we think about, like, letters and epistolatory history, and I came up with an idea of, making a postcard, and then on the back of it, I'd have information about Obour Tanner and her deep friendship with Phillis Wheatly Peters, and the fact that she goes on to be manumitted and helps the like a mutual aid society down in Newport. And although she, to my knowledge, doesn't come back to Worcester, I think it's still a very important connection, not only to a famous poet, but also just to women making important strides for other women through mutual aid societies. Continuing to think about bodies of work that I was looking at, I know the Quock Walker trials, and I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with the Quock Walker trials, took place in Worcester. And so some of my research, I was realizing that, oh, hey, the courthouse land where the first, trials were taking place is actually still a courthouse. Well, it became apartments not so long ago, but the physical building looks like a courthouse. If ever you've been to Worcester, it's like in Lincoln Square. And the physical courthouse is now a private residence, like a couple streets behind it. But I started using collage to reimagine these buildings on their original sites. So thinking about, what it would have been like to actually have that physical building, right? And the fact that this courthouse land, has seen such history around not only the Quock Walker trials, but also, going on to other Supreme Court trials and, Job Cushing cases, and the fact that it was a private residence. So I also I photographed the private residence as well, but photos don't always work out how you intend. So those photos didn't necessarily come together, but I think looking at the strength of buildings that were kind of once extant, and what were they and where are they now, and how can we think about history being present, not only the courthouse, but also other buildings that were around town and mansions, which brings me to the Gardner Chandler Mansion. Across from City Hall in Worcester, there was a large mansion that the Worcester Historical Society, or sorry, the Museum of Worcester, they just rebranded. The Museum of Worcester, talks about on their Revolution website, and Sheriff Gardner Chandler. And I wonder, maybe there's room for exploring Gardner Chandler's history of enslaving individuals, and not just the rah-rah kind of Gardner Chandler, John Chandler, like Chandler family legacy. So the other kind of interesting thing about this piece and thinking about Gardner Chandler and Dinah in Cumberland is the fact that the reverend who married them has a plaque, diagonally across also from City Hall. So there's just a lot of potential for telling complex stories interconnected and interwoven in the landscape. And I think through my photography and through, thinking about how we tell history and where we can activate spaces, I just like mull on that a lot, if that makes sense. And additionally, another kind of the building series is Aaron Lopez's home, which was in Worcester County. He moved from Newport with his family and enslaved individuals. The house goes on to be the first Leicester Academy, where Eli Whitney goes, and just thinking about spaces and places and buildings and the legacy of a site and a space. I think I sit with that a lot and am inspired by historic house museums specifically because you can tell such nuanced space like stories in spaces and so I think through photography, I was trying to explore, what are these sites and what are these places telling us? The individual I referenced whose monument is on the Worcester Common is Timothy Bigelow. There is the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution chapter, is named the Timothy Bigelow chapter, and they're one of the oldest houses in Worcester. It's called the Oaks. Timothy Bigelow is listed as having an enslaved individual, and his monument, which was put up later in life by a family member, the photo on the left, is, directly across from the Soldiers Monument in Worcester, which is recognizing the Civil War. So I've been going back to the postcard concept of, well, how do we, how do I talk about providing more context and history around things and places in our landscape, whether it's monuments and markers, and the dichotomy of, having this really massive monument to Timothy Bigelow with no recognition that he was an enslaver, opposite, the Civil War monument, recognizing the fight to, abolish slavery and so much more. And I just think there's a lot of space to continue to say, well, they're like 50 feet apart, right, on the Worcester Common. So I think that it could just be really interesting to continue having conversations about the fact that we have these two really big monuments, like right, downtown. This is just another picture of the Soldiers Monument. You can see the Bigelow Monument in the background as well. So it's not as, while the Bigelow Monument isn't as large as the Civil War Soldiers Monument, I think the fact that they're like in stark contrast to each other leaves some space to talk about the nuance. One other idea I explored through my research and my artwork, you might all be familiar with Macris files. They're the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System. You can go online, you can look at your house, you can look at the houses around town. If they're historic, they'll be on there. You can see, old map drawings and old photographs. And something I realized as I was looking at this information, because it was a resource for learning about buildings and certain individuals, is that, there's never any mention of the fact that these wealthy white men were enslavers in town, or what would it look like if we were to amend the Macris files to highlight the historical documents and the primary research to say, well, hey, look, Reverend Goss was actually an enslaver, and you can see Prudence listed here, and the homeowners, although they might not, I don't know how they'd feel about having additional information, but you can amend Macris files. So I created a body of physical work, and when I stop sharing my slides, I can hold some up, but of the idea of like, what would it be like if Macris were to tell a more whole history, right? And how can we get to a point where it's not just, you know, Reverend Goss was the, you know, Reverend of Bolton, and there was the Goss controversy, and you know, his house is built in the, you know, federal style. I think if we're providing information and context through these historical documents, using primary research and primary documents to tell a more complete history that's already, you know, in the records, would be beneficial for everybody, really. And another avenue that I explored with this body of work was looking at the freedom-seeking ads. So, you know, the records indicate that there are at least, you know, 17 individuals who were enslaved in Worcester County that then sought their freedom through running away. And that's where the Boston Post, the Massachusetts Spy, you know, Isaiah Thomas's, you know, newspapers listed the ads. And what would it be to include those in the Macris files as well? Because that also contextualizes the homeowners and the enslavers, and it acknowledges the individuals that were also in the building that never get mentioned in the Macris files. So, so I created my Macris body of artwork based on kind of the primary documents and the research. And like I said, they're like these physical Macris documents, but maybe if we get enough folks interested in amending the Macris files, like we can make this happen. Jumping into a little bit of the 19th century with the topic of the history of enslavement and freedom, looking at, you know, Seth Rockman, if y'all were there, talked about the Brogans and North Brookfield and the industries. Worcester, once again, being such an industrial city, had both the Crompton and Knowles loom works buildings, making looms, making carpet looms. You know, there were shoe manufacturers all around in Worcester County, obviously North Brookfield. But this is where I also tried to create a body of work that was looking at contextualizing our 19th century industrial history of like barbed wire manufacturing, and providing a little bit more information on how those industries used oppressive labors in the South. And you know, the 19th century Worcester industrialists were complicit as well. So things I think about as it's Rev 250 around the corner, right? I'd love to see Joseph McGill and his slave dwelling project come to Massachusetts. You know, I know Joseph McGill sleeps in extant slave dwelling sites, and they've gone to Hempstead House in Connecticut. You know, he's been to the Royal, and I think it would be really exciting to have him come to New England and you know, and stay and educate folks in Massachusetts. I do have a newer position, a new job. I'm no longer at the New England Museum Association, but in my work at the New England Museum Association, I was fortunate to meet lots of museums and members doing this work, and I think Joe McGill would just be a great asset to our region. With my new job at the Wayland Museum, I do want to highlight that a book on Wayland and Sudbury did just come out. Jade Siaka. It's called Enslavement in the Puritan Village. So I'd love to see a way for Joe McGill to come to Massachusetts. We just need to find some good grant funds to get him up here. Additionally, I think about the ways that museums can continue to contextualize objects in their collection. The Worcester Art Museum holds Moses Gill's pewter collection, which is the photo in the right corner. Moses Gill was an enslaver in Princeton, Massachusetts. Nero, Thomas, and Flora are the individuals that are buried in the Princeton cemetery that he enslaved, that Moses Gill enslaved. And when you look at the pewter, you know, there's just like no mention of any of his enslaved individuals. And I know the Worcester Art Museum has redone some labels, which is wonderful, in their portrait gallery. So I think just, continuing on that trajectory to really highlight.
Scarlett, I couldn't
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you now.
Oh.
Maybe it was my thing, but I couldn't hear you.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I was probably starting to mumble. But yeah, the other thing I think about at the our local art institution is more context for talking about Paul Revere's snuff box cowrie shell and how did the cowrie shell end up
So
in.
is it me or is it happening again? Are you talking and I can't hear you? I don't want to.
I
Is
can
it
hear
else?
her. Yes, we can hear her. We'll try and get that corrected for you. If you can mute your
All right, I'm
sound, because
sorry.
she's still
Me.
presenting.
I'm
That's okay.
sorry.
Sorry,
No,
go
you're
ahead,
okay.
Scarlett.
No worries. Yeah, so I think just thinking about how certain objects got into the museum and how we can talk about the history of enslavement, whether it's related to Moses Gill's, pewter, or the history of mahogany and industry. And I just, for future, I'd love to see more institutions not be afraid to dig into to that kind of history. And I think some are getting there, which is very exciting. But that's kind of a future dream, I guess. And I think art can be actually I'll have to quote Marika, because she said that art can be a good landing spot for the hard conversations. And I do believe that, and that's why I love art museums and libraries. Another thing for the future, right? I know maybe some of your institutions have markers or signs or posts, something recognizing the individuals who might be have been enslaved on those sites or in the town. Hopkinton is just putting up a sign now, and I wonder where are like the stumbling stones, like are the markers getting across the information? Are they being glossed over? Are they, where can we make sure that that's the path that sites or institutions or towns can best tell these stories in history. And something I think about a lot is the fact that across from the Gardner Chandler Mansion, is the Worcester City Hall, right? Being a big symbol of government and history. But obviously no mention that across the street, Dinah had been enslaved there in Cumberland. Y'all might already be familiar with the tercentenary signs as well. I lived across from a tercentenary sign for many years, and it's in our landscape. Most people maybe drive by it and never think about it, but as we approach the semi-quincentennial, I think it's an exciting opportunity for towns to continue to grapple with the inaccuracies and offensive language that can be found in many of the tercentenary signs. A lot of them are rusting. The one in Worcester, a couple of them in Worcester are rusting. I know some towns like Marblehead are contextualizing with additional signs, where others are looking to remove them completely. So, I don't necessarily have an answer, but I think it's another important point and way that maybe we don't think of these markers as art, but technically they're kind of these, rectangle sculptures in the landscape that, whether we like it or not, are telling a history. And having towns consider and grapple with that could be a good semi-quincentennial step, I'd say. So I am very happy that you all joined me. I'm gonna stop screen sharing, and I'll hold up some of my postcards and my, Macris files, and I'm happy to kind of answer any questions. Hold on, I'll stop share. Okay, hi. So we have, my postcards were kind of postcard size, right? Where the visitors who came to the show I had, information on the back panels and then kind of QR codes. And, they ranged in everything talking from, about the Bigelow Monument and the Soldiers Monument to the barbed wire Washburn and Moen factory. And so that was kind of that body of work. And then I'll just hold up very quickly. These were like my physical, macros files with, oh gosh, it's like blurring on me, but physical macros files that, recognize that, this is the home of Solomon Prentice and Grafton, and, Pompey and Lucy and Zipporah had been enslaved on this site, and there's no mention of them in the current macros file. So like, how can we amend that to say these people lived in this building too? So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I did, share research on the Nesri website. I didn't go into like super great detail about all of the stories and information that I learned, but being respectful of time, I'll stop talking and give a minute to listen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scarlett, for that beautiful presentation. I will encourage anyone, if you have a question, I do see a couple questions in the chat,
Yeah.
Scarlett and Dr. Barbara Brown. I don't know if you want to go through the comments, or Miss Dr. Brown, did you have a question? I seen your hand up earlier. Good morning, by the way, too. And I think you're muted, Barbara.
You're muted.
Thank you.
There we go.
First of all, Scarlett, I have to say, I'm excited by your presentation, and especially by thinking about it in terms of postcards and other physicalities. And I can't wait to hear from other people, such as Bob Bellinger, about what's going on in Lexington. My question is very narrow, which is the Northeast Slave Records Index. How useful is it? Because I looked at Brookline and it was incomplete. And I thought, is it important enough for me to drop other things and pay attention to this?
Yeah, good question. So NESRI, the Northeast Slavery Research Index, it's based out of SUNY and John Jay. And I think it's helpful, the fact that, if you're putting documentation and research into it and you can find the data, they have some really great like graphs and charts and kind of quantitative data, which isn't necessarily like the humanity aspect of this information, but it's a really, to be honest, I think it can sometimes be a little bit of a clunky system. And when you use the search feature, it tracks the information kind of like a spreadsheet, but it takes a couple steps to get there, if that makes sense. So I think it's not the cleanest database set, but I think it can be information that that can be helpful and useful. So I'd say you should certainly send the information over to them. Just the output on it on the back end might not look the same as other databases that you might be used to, if that helps, Barbara.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Again, brilliant. And I want to know who else is using witness stones and stepping stones and how that goes, and what kind of feedback do you get from your town, and how do you deal with the negativity?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's from Lexington here, I'm sure they could probably share stories. I know.
I have my hand up.
Yeah.
And first of all, thank you for a very inspiring presentation. It's great work you're doing. And Barbara Brown, thanks for asking me to say something. But to address, yes, in Lexington, there are two stopping stones that were put in a couple of years ago, I believe, for Dinah and Jack, who were enslaved at the Hancock Clark House by Reverend Hancock. And they are there. But as we are preparing for the 250th in a couple of weeks of the Battle of Lexington, a couple of interesting things have taken place. Last week, there was an unveiling and a premiere of two projects that were done, spearheaded by Sean Osborne of the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington, along with Lex Media and others. One was a documentary series looking at 11 Black patriots of the Revolutionary War era, and it was a discussion with people who had done work on each of them. And it's a 9-part series. It's available on YouTube. YouTube. I'll try to figure out how to put the links in the chat. But it also was an unveiling of banners of those 11 folks, which was the 11 people are, let's see, Prince Chester and Kate Chester, his wife, Pomp Blackman, Pompey Fisk, Caesar and John Ferret, Prince Estabrook, Venus Rowe, Adam Tidd, and Eli and Silas Perdue. And what was done was the creation of these very large banners for each of them with images that were done by an artist. We've been doing that with Black History Month banners that go up every February in town, but these are distinct and different from those. And then they were, the next day, Friday, mounted on the Hancock Church of Christ. So 9 of them are there. 2 will be at the First Parish. These 2 churches are on the sides of Lexington Green, where the 250 celebration and the battle reenactment will be taken. So people will have to see these images of Black Revolutionary War veterans and community members. And on the third side of the green is where the Lexington, the Women's Monument is, which was put up less than a year ago, last May. And it has the stories of women from that era, including several Black women. So anyone who comes into town will see this presence and get a taste of some of these other stories. And I think those are the kinds of things that we as historians can do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bellinger. Does anyone have?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I see.
I can quickly answer. There's a few.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'll come back to you, Debbie.
I'm
Go
happy to
ahead,
share my
Debbie.
presentation. Winthrop Chandler, sounding like a familiar name off the top of my head. Without my data, I can't tell you right this second. Thank you, Marika, for the LaRouche Fraser quote. And regarding what's known about Obour Tanner's move in life in Worcester, a lot of the letters that remain are Phillis Wheatly Peters. So Obour's back, don't necessarily. And there's Honore Jeffers, a poet, a contemporary poet, who wrote some beautiful poetry and books kind of about their friendship and kind of the unanswered questions. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that, Debbie. Looks like Patrick said historic Deerfield has the witness stones as well. And regarding Macris, I did reach out to them. They said, and I think they said that they are open to amendments, but I haven't sent them what I'm proposing, so I don't know what pushback I could get, but I can keep you posted. Okay, that was the quick chat. Okay.
Jane, did you have a question? I think Jane had.
Well, I had a comment about Hopkinton because they had a plaque ready to go into the center of town. The reason I got involved with it is that we had an enslaved man who lived in Sudbury, had connections to Hopkinton, and his name is on the plaque. So that's how I got involved. And they have just gotten blowback on mounting it in the center of town. Of course, Hopkinton is the start of the Boston Marathon, and so they are it's going to the selectmen's meeting, and they're trying to find out if there's another place where it could possibly be installed. So anyway, thank you to Scarlett, by the way, because I always enjoy hearing about and talking about enslaved people. So.
Thank you, Jane. Debbie, did you get your question answered?
I actually have a follow-up for Dr. Bellinger about the reenactment in Lexington. I was wondering if you knew if there was representation of the Black soldiers among the reenactors that will be seen in this year's presentation on to celebrate Patriots Day.
That's a really good question. And I wish I could give you a definitive answer. I know that Prince Estabrook, who was definitely there and was wounded, it has been played by Charlie Price for years and years. He's now 93, so he probably will not be an active participant this year. I don't know if anyone else has come in to take his place, and I'm not sure if there are others. There may be. I have not been to the reenactment in a couple of years, in several years, so I'm not sure. But I'll, see if there is anything going on. I know there were some young African Americans in the William Diamond Jr. Fife and Drum group, but they have their family has moved out of town, so they're not here now. So I don't know.
Miss Smith, you have a question?
I just
Beautiful
have,
purple.
thank you. I'm a neophyte of all of this, and so I'm not going to be ashamed of my questions, and I'm trying to listen, and I'm looking and I'm seeing names, and I'm wondering if they're related to so-and-so, but we have been doing this, something called Roxbury Collaborative here in Boston, and so we've been doing Patriots Day for years, and so we have the 54th, reenactors and so forth, and I was just talking to one of them last night, and he is a reenactor for the Revolutionary War and African American, and so there are colleagues here that do that, so I don't know if you know them or if that has anything to do with what you all were talking about. But it might be a lead, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Jamada, good.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Dennis.
All right. We've known each other for years. So
Our mothers knew each other.
yeah. Two things. One, first of all, I did see a comment about Scarlett's presentation on if you go to YouTube and Google up Slave Legacy History Coalition, it will give you all of our past presentations, which are on the YouTube site, in case any of you who are here today would like to, revisit some of the presentations we've had. They are on YouTube. So now, in terms of whoever you're referring to, I know a few of the people in the reenactment brigade that they have. So if we get in touch, maybe at some point we could include them as part of a presentation, or certainly highlight in our newsletter where they may be appearing. So there is a mutual opportunity to collaborate on that. I did want to say to Bob Bellinger that if you wanted to share your link with us, you can send it. And we will make sure it gets in our newsletter so that people can, connect with it. So that's available as a platform to link people up to the site that you're referring to. And that's also available to anyone.
He froze again. I'm sorry. I'm Dr. Bellinger. I'm sure you probably was able to fill in his gap. He was requesting if we can send it to us, we can get into the newsletter. Dad, you said something else you was leading on to. You said for everybody else, and you froze again.
Oh, I was just saying that's available if everyone else, and I apologize because my screen keeps freezing sometimes. For those who may have information or a link of an event that may, play that refers to the legacy and history of slavery, we certainly would, welcome the opportunity to highlight it on our newsletter and
website.
And website, yes. And reference to Scarlett, great presentation. Thank you very much. And Joe McGill, who has a project called the Slave Quarters Project. I know Joe. He lives in South Carolina. I've actually been to one of his presentations that he had in Atlanta here, and it's a great project. And what he's done is visited and documented numerous locations throughout the country that were slave quarters. We do want to have him here at some time as a presenter so he can walk us through that. And so thank you. That was a good, I do need to be in touch with him. Scarlett, just one other thing on your postcards, if you send us the information, we can post that on our newsletter and in our website also, about, but please send it to either, to one of us, and Naomi is a good contact. And she'll make sure it happens.
Could we also buy them?
Yes. How do you buy them?
I wouldn't. I can just mail them to you. No, you don't know, no money. Like I'll put my email in the chat, or it's director@whalenmuseum.org. But or you can put your, I guess, yeah. You probably don't want to put your address in the chat, but you can send me an email, and I'm happy to send you them. And I think the great thing about art too is that you can always iterate and improve, and look for feedback. And critiques can be tough and hard, but also that's where you grow and learn, right? So I'm not going to say that they're perfect or even finished, but I think they're a good starting point for having conversations.
That's good. They are. And one other point before is that as Naomi mentioned, the Old North Luminary, most of you know it as the Old North Church, has provided us with some free tickets, 10 free tickets to the Revolutionaries Edge play, and is the Nikki Stewart's email is. Could you put it in the chat?
Yep.
There's a limited number.
Patrick did. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay. All right. So anyway, please do contact them if you're interested in.
And he froze again. So if you are interested in getting in some free tickets, please go to that link and they will be happy to get that for you. I do want to just, Dad, were you finished? You came back.
Oh, no, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. I do want to just recap what my father said. All of our previous and former presentations are on our Slave Legacy History Coalition YouTube channel. We also have a new website that is launched, so there's a lot of information on there. So if you do want to see a recap of this meeting as well, and you're welcome to share it, you will be able to do that as well. Our next presenter next month is Dr. Phillis Wheatly, and we are very looking forward to her presentation next month, and we're also looking forward to your seeing you again next month. Is there any other last questions or comments for Debbie?
Just a quick question. I'm fascinated to learn more about this group in Roxbury of the Black reenactors. Is there a link or something that can be dropped, or their name that we can Google, if it can be dropped in the chat for us to follow up about that? I would love to know if they are doing something for Patriots Day that we can attend, or if there's something upcoming.
Well, they're going to be part of our program, so you're cordially invited to come to the to Roxbury where the ride, William Dawes literally stopped at First Church in Roxbury. So we literally have a full program on that day. And I guess what I can do, I'm so technically challenged, but technology challenged, but I can send the flyers to maybe Dennis or Egypt or someone, and then you can send it to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could do that, Jamada. That would be great. Wait, why don't you just tell her when is the date again?
Patriots Day.
Oh, okay.
Is that the
And,
19th? That's gonna be the 19th
20
on Saturday?
No, Monday.
Monday?
Actually, Patriots Day. Yeah, the day of the marathon.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're right there at the First Church of Roxbury, right up in Nubian Square. And we have a full breakfast and everything. It's free. And we have Unsung Hero Awards, and we have a scholarship for students who write about Patriots Day. We stop when William Dawes gets there, and we reenact what took place. The pastor kind of blesses everything, and the horse rests for a minute, and then they ring the church bell, and then he goes on, and we have a very good program. So
That sounds
I'll try
great.
to.
What time does it start?
For me, my I have 2% on my cell. Okay, so bear with me. I'm gonna try to find it. It's early. It's early, like 9 o'clock. It starts at 9. Oh, we have a free trolley ride through the city of Roxbury, trolley ride. Byron Russian is going to be doing the the trolley ride, and the Dillaway Thomas House is open during that time. So it's a really good thing. And then we have a little keynote speaker. I'm getting ready to find my little.
That sounds really fantastic. Sounds like it's a
all right.
day of activities. That would
Yes, we've been doing it for many, many years now.
Jamada, can you make sure we have a flyer on that? And we'll post.
I'm gonna send it to you, Dennis. I think I have your email. I'm trying to see.
People have posted that it's from 8 to 1.
Okay.
Oh, really? Well, it's probably somebody who knows how to get on the but we have some beautiful flyers. I'm gonna send it to you, Dennis.
Okay. And we'll post it and we'll get it out. We have a couple of announcements that we have to resend out
go
to
on.
everybody. Okay. Just send it to us today and we'll get it out, Jamada. Okay.
Well, I can read this right now. 8:15 National Lancers William Dawes reenactment and send-off. 9 to 10 free breakfast buffet provided by the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Newton. 10 to 10:15 the Ralph F. Brown Unsung Hero Memorial Scholarship Awards. Unsung Hero Award. And 10 to 10:15 the historic talks, and then the trolley tour. All events are free. April the 21st, First Church in Roxbury. 10 Putman Street in Roxbury. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamada.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jamada. And thank you to you too, Scarlett, once again for that beautiful presentation. Thank you for honoring us with your time today. I really do appreciate you, my friend. So everyone, Scarlett's presentation will be available if you want to go back and recap all the information that she provided of us today. And again, Scarlett, from our family, from the team, the Slave Legacy History Coalition, we thank you for sharing your time with us today. And thank you all for coming today. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.